Hi, this is Kirby Summers, and I welcome you to the Epstein Project podcast. It's June 22nd. It's Wednesday. It's just before 12 noon. I recorded this, and I cried so many times during that recording that I decided to just re-record it now that my crying jag is over. I think you'll hear me and understand me a little bit better. Before I get started, I want to ask you to please subscribe and please like the video. I, I want to explain many things. I want to explain how the CIA subverted the Jeffrey Epstein case. I want to explain why I got so fed up that I basically no longer want to tweet. I want to explain what's been going on behind the scenes and what some of you may not even be aware of, even though I have tried multiple times to get my point across. It's hard to get into this, but you are aware that I have discussed Stanley Pottinger, who, by the way, that's not really his name. His name is John Stanley Pottinger. How I have described, who's an attorney who became the partner for Bradley Edwards, who is also an attorney for the Epstein victims, and how they worked together with David Boies. Now, when David Boies sort of came on the scene, many of us were surprised because we knew of his background, being Harvey Weinstein's attorney, being the person who hired on behalf of Weinstein the Israeli firm Black Cube, which is staffed by former Mossad agents. I even uploaded to Twitter multiple times the contract signed by David Boies. I uploaded it. I uploaded a lot of information. Many people decided to, well, we'll give him a pass. Well, we really should not have given any of these attorneys a pass. Okay. We were all snookered, all of us. Now, granted, I have been trying to sort of raise the alarm bell for a while, and I got a little weary because I also realized that a lot of the people who comment on my tweets appear to be normal people, but they will make a comment that deters from the matter at hand. And so that my trying to share information with you, which I have done multiple times, that information gets distorted by people who have been, I 100% believe this, placed on my feed to misguide you intentionally, because who does that? The intelligence agencies do that. They're wonderful at misdirection. So just to explain a little bit more about what kind of misdirection David Boies is capable of, what he's a very wealthy attorney, as you all know. I think he's much closer to being a billionaire than he probably would like to admit. He has Picasso's hanging on his multiple homes. However, when he goes in front of a jury, and let me remind you that not one of the Epstein cases, not one, has gone to court. That has been, and according to Pottinger, Edwards, and Boies, they have stated to mainstream media that they have handled approximately 50 cases. Now, 50 cases of the only 130 that have applied to the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund is a big percentage. And 50 cases was reported a long time ago, so there's no telling how many cases this trio, which I no longer, I'm going to tell you up front that if you look at Bill Barr as a gatekeeper and as someone worthy of your venom and your hatred, if you see him as a gatekeeper, it's because he has a history that we can refer to, and we can sort of look at the patterns and see what he has done, right? Well, let's add the names David Boies, Bradley Edwards, who I believed at first to be innocent, but I discovered not so. And before I'm finished with this podcast, I'm going to explain why. And John Stanley Pottinger, aka Stan Pottinger. Okay, there's a reason that he has a first name that he doesn't use, and he uses his middle name. That's because he's a CIA agent and has been a lifer. Okay. I'm really upset. And I thought that I had cried my way through this podcast the first time I did it. So I'm going to just try to hunker down. So I want to start with Stanley Pottinger and remind you or inform you, if you are unaware, that he's approximately 82 years old now. That in 1973, he was tapped on the shoulder by Richard Nixon, Tricky Dicky, who was the president of the United States, to be the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Civil Rights Division. He held that position for 6 administrations. Okay, 6 administrations commencing in 1973. However, he had been working for Nixon's campaign from way before. So basically, I'm thinking 1968. Maybe 1967, he began working with Richard Nixon. Who else began working with Richard Nixon? Who else? Who else? Who else? Who else? I'm waiting to see if anybody's going to write anything down there, but I guess I'm not going to see you guys do it. But Roger Stone, the Dirty Tricks operative, who also worked with President Donald Trump. And we know that Roger Stone had a big tattoo on his back of what? Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon is his idol. Richard Nixon has gone down in history as being the man who had to sort of abdicate his throne like the prince in the UK and leave the presidency because he was impeached, and that's considered that it was done because of Watergate. Well, I don't see that as his biggest offense. There are other offenses which I have described, namely things that came out in the church committee hearings about civil rights abuses. Oh, who's in civil rights? Stanley Pottinger. Oh, that's right. Civil rights abuses, the MK Ultra experiments, which are also civil rights abuses. But MK Ultra did not finish there. Okay. A whistleblower CIA agent, whose name I will not mention, says that not only did it not finish there, it's called MK Ultra Phase 2 to present day. Phase 2. And he talks about Mockingbird media. So to get back to Stanley Pottinger, Maria Farmer, who was taken off Twitter by David Boies, when I sent a cease and desist because she was saying things that were very unusual, not just about myself, but other people. And there was something that happened, and I was really, really cracking down on the MK Ultra aspect of what was going on around her. And we do know that Virginia Giuffre has had the butterfly as her avatar, which she has defended for the last couple of years. However, David Boies decided to end Maria's Twitter. That only made Maria decide to go on talk shows, podcasts, not talk shows necessarily, where she revealed that she dated Stanley Pottinger. And that in 2016, that's when it began. Now, if you read Bradley Edwards' book, you will find out that in 2016, Bradley Edwards and Stanley Pottinger took a trip to Paducah, Kentucky, where they met with Maria Farmer. Now, Maria Farmer's story may have been created at that time. And I'm not going to get into big specifics, but I will say this. Her story has holes in it. I hate to use that phrase because, so for example, when she was on Whitney Webb's 3-hour interview, the one that she now claims she didn't give Whitney the permission to do, and we all know she did. She states that when she called the FBI, mind you, it was one phone call to the FBI, that when she called the FBI, she told them about the game show host, Donald Trump. Donald Trump began his show, The Apprentice, in 2004. Maria Farmer alleges that she made that phone call to the FBI in 1996. Even if we say she did it in 1997, which she did not, it was in 1996. That's when she would have to be a fortune teller to know that Donald Trump would one day be a talk show host. The other thing that she rarely discusses, but her mistakes are coming out now. Bravo for some of her mistakes, because now we're beginning to see a bigger part of the picture that was kept from the main, from us, from people, us, the public. Another thing was that after her stay at Leslie Wexner's home in Ohio, and after what she alleges was whatever happened, I'm not going to get into it because I no longer believe the official story as she has told it. But she did not come straight to New York, as most of us assumed after listening to her 3-hour conversation with Whitney Webb. No, she has recently explained to people, she went to Texas to stay with family. Now, her mother was living in Texas. Her sisters are living in Texas. She went to Texas for, I think, about a week, 5 to 7 days, something like that. Depending on who she talks to, she says 5 days or 7 days. So if you're terrified that you were almost murdered, that you were, quote, kidnapped, and that you think your little sister, meaning Annie Farmer, is dead, you're not going to go on vacation. Or if you are, you're going to go to your family's home, and from there you will call the authorities. But that's not what Maria Farmer did. What Maria Farmer did is she went and she had a little vacation, and then she came back to New York City, which is where I'm sitting today, New York City. She would have gone to her home in Soho, which is where she lived at the time. And then, but she would have done that immediately. She would not have waited a week. So there are a lot of things about Maria's story that no longer ring true. Additionally, in 2016, that is when Maria Farmer starts a relationship with Stanley Pottinger. He becomes her, according to her boyfriend. Okay. And so according to her, in 2016, she claims that she hadn't been on a date or had a boyfriend for 20 years. And suddenly there's this man And the way she describes him, it can only be Stanley Pottinger, because he tells her that he dated Gloria Steinem and for a long time, and that if she only knew about with Gloria Steinem, how she destroyed the women's movement and the bad things that she did against women, that she would look at her differently. Well, guess what? I'm looking at all of the victims differently, because Stanley Pottinger went ahead and created a front company, a fake company for Maria Farmer. Some of us have found it. I put it up on my Twitter. I put screenshots of it because it was removed. So from 2016 until, I suppose, present day, when she no longer needs the money because Pottinger, David Boies, and Bradley Edwards have been able to give her money from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, even though she was never raped, even though Annie Farmer was never raped, and their sister Ashley was 12 and never even met Epstein. They ended up with money from the settlement. Why? Because she alleges, and I believe her because I've done some poking around, that Stanley Pottinger would get drunk. And when he got drunk, he talked a lot. And what did he say? He told her not only that Gloria Steinem was CIA, which most of us knew, and in fact, you can find information about that, but that he was too was CIA. Okay, so he sets up a company, a front company for her. He to funnel money to her. That's called fraud. That's called fraud. All right, so not everything that we have seen is the way it appears. So I want to go back to say that Nixon features very prominently in the Epstein case, and I'm the only one to have said this. Now, I will remind you that Jeffrey Epstein alleges it was through Nixon's Attorney General, John, what is his last name? Nixon's attorney. You know, I have a block. I'm going to try to find his name because I don't want to miss one single thing. I just get so upset that we have all been psyoped. Oh, John Mitchell. Okay. So Jeffrey Epstein, in an interview that he did many years ago, did say that it was President Nixon's Attorney General, John Mitchell, who introduced him to Stephen Hoffenberg. Hoffenberg alleges it was someone else. I believe it was Richard Nixon because many things surround Richard Nixon. Pottinger surrounds Richard Nixon. I just want to say that Richard Nixon's he has many crimes. Now, you've all heard of the October surprise. And if you haven't, please look it up. The October surprise during the Ronald Reagan presidential campaign, where basically he sent, I think it was Michael Reconciuto, who was connected to the Promise situation with the Cabazon Indians, a CIA organization in California. But Michael Reconciuto flew with another CIA guy to Iran and paid, I think it was $40 million, and basically said to them, hold on to the hostages, because that was the only way Ronald Reagan was going to beat the incumbent, who was Jimmy Carter. And lo and behold, that's what happened. And so the day that Ronald Reagan took his oath of office, 5 hours later, the hostages were released. Who got congratulated? Ronald Reagan, and the world forgot about Jimmy Carter. None of the presidents have been great, but I'm not going to talk about Jimmy Carter and all of his things. But I will say that Richard Nixon had his own little October surprise that nobody talks about. It was in 1968 when he was running against President Lyndon Johnson, who took over. He was the vice president for John Kennedy for JFK. And when JFK was assassinated, if you remember, he, as vice president, ascended to the presidency. Well, he ran to become president again for the second official term. And he ran against who? Richard Nixon. What does Richard Nixon do? Well, after he hears on the news, because President Lyndon Johnson is in talks with the people in North Vietnam, and he makes a bold mainstream media public announcement. It was a major deal. He said that they were in talks to end the war, that he had initiated talks, and that the end of the war in Vietnam was near. Oh, Nixon hears this, and what does he do? He goes behind Lyndon Johnson's back to the same people with whom he was negotiating, and he says to them, don't believe Lyndon Johnson, don't believe him. He's not going to do anything. You know who's going to help you? I'm going to help you. So that based on this, the people that Lyndon Johnson had sort of cemented a deal with, they reneged. And what did that do? It meant that Nixon won. So how do I know this happened? How come you don't know this happened? Because a former CIA agent turned whistleblower, who I probably will share his name in one of my newsletters, knew that Lyndon Johnson had a secret bugging device over there with the head guys that were running the North Vietnamese war. And, you know, sort of to monitor what was going on and who was saying what and what the deal was. And they intercepted the Richard Nixon situation. So they knew about it. And of course, Lyndon Johnson was really upset, but he could not even out, he could not out the treacherous, treasonous, horrific action and the lives that it cost, not just the American soldiers, but the Vietnamese, that Nixon had in fact continued the war. And the reason he couldn't do it is because it was an illegal recording. So he had to sort of not say anything so that Nixon became the president. All right, let's move forward to Brad Edwards. Brad Edwards was a partner of Scott Rothstein. Scott Rothstein is now in jail. He's serving a 50-year sentence for running a 1.2 or a $1.5 billion Ponzi scheme, collecting money on the Epstein survivors. Bradley Edwards was also sued by Jeffrey Epstein, and at some point they resolved that. However, Bradley Edwards was a partner of Scott Rothstein. Who else was in that office with Scott Rothstein? All of the president's men. And when I say all the president's men, there was a book and there was a film about all of the president's men revolving around President Richard Nixon. So Roger Stone had an office in Scott Rothstein's office. He had his business cards with the same address where Bradley Edwards kept an office. Okay, so we are talking about somebody like Bradley Edwards, Stanley Pottinger, and by the way, David Boies refers to Stanley Pottinger as his private 007. So when we hear 007, you and I think, oh, James Bond, the movies, 007. No, when it is said by David Boies, what that means is that, yeah, that's his private CIA agent, right? That's his private guy. Well, he was also Maria Farmer's private guy. And all of them have been the victim's private guy, which is why from the beginning, this was never going to be a Me Too case. Why? Because of the David Boies situation. No one really knew yet about David Pottinger's role. Nobody knew yet about Bradley Edwards' role, but everybody knew about David Boies's role, and it was already set up to fail. So set up to fail, how? In the same way that Gloria Steinem, who was Stanley Pottinger's girlfriend for 10 years on and off, infiltrated a grassroots movement, at the feminist movement. She subverted it, and basically destroyed it. And she still goes around posing as a feminist. No, she is an operative, just like Pottinger, just like Boies, and frankly, just like Edwards. And sadly, this extends to the people that they represent, because I could not understand, for example, why Maria Farmer would lie about things that were meaningless. I'll give you one such lie. She said something about Rosanna Arquette calling her from out of the blue. That never happened. That never happened. Why would Rosanna Arquette call her from out of the blue? Who is Maria Farmer to Rosanna Arquette, who's a pretty well-known actress? She said the same thing about me, that I called her from out of the blue. Why the hell would I call Maria Farmer from out of the blue? For what purpose? For what purpose? So that she had made a couple of comments, it made no sense. And then when she just recently said this thing about Whitney Webb, she didn't give her permission. Then I started to say, oh, I know, she's doing the same thing that Stanley Pottinger would have probably helped Gloria Steinem in order to muddy the waters. So you say things that are like almost ludicrous, and we see it happening on Twitter all the time. So that not only does it muddy the water, because our instinct, just like what happened with Gloria Steinem, is we want to believe in heroes. We want to believe in helping the cause. And that's why the Ms. magazine, which was funded, by the way, by another one of the guys in the Jeffrey Epstein circle. Oh God, this is just so horrible that I'm getting a headache just talking to you about this. So that when she subverts the feminist movement, all of these dirty tricks are used. In fact, if you listen, there's a Netflix special now with Roger Stone. If you hear him talk, he talks about this thing that he learned while he was sort of helping Nixon, and he was in there at the same time that Pottinger was there. You know, that all of these dirty tricks were learned by all of these guys, and they were there when George H.W. Bush became the CIA director, and they were there when William Colby was there. And you know, once you're a CIA guy, you're always a CIA guy. So about Gloria Steinem, during her time as the, let's say that she claims that she infiltrated the Hugh Hefner's Bunny Club. No, she didn't, because Hugh Hefner is also CIA. Hugh Hefner had a setup very similar to Jeffrey Epstein's. Hugh Hefner had something called a grotto at his mansion, at the Playboy Mansion. There was the infamous Playboy Grotto where orgies were said to prevail. Well, Jeffrey Epstein had an island where orgies were said to prevail. and the similarities are so many. So Hefner has a 727. Epstein had a 727. I just hit the mic. If it were a punching bag, I'd probably hit it a lot harder. I just did a whole hour and a half podcast about Epstein's 727 and other things connected to Colby and a 727 with Professor Hamamoto, and I urge you to go and listen to that. He also, Hugh Hefner, collected compromat in the same way that Jeffrey Epstein collected compromat. So he would film and have recording devices, and he would blackmail people. And who was one of, oh, I get so upset. Again, this is the second time. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to get upset. I'm going to try to stay on target. So who else was really close friends with Hugh Hefner? Not only was Bernie Kornfeld, which I've already discussed, and which another CIA asset, and you just go to my Twitter, there's a lot of stuff there, but also Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, who just a couple of days ago settled the lawsuit after having raped a 16-year-old girl at Hefner's mansion back, I believe, in 1974, 1975, 1976. So that Hefner was another Epstein, okay? And these rings don't end. They're connected to Roy Cohn's trafficking ring. They're connected to the Franklin child abuse scandal. They're connected to the ring that Karen Mulder was trying to out while she was in Paris on a TV show and nobody let her talk. I put that as a chapter in my book, Ghislaine Maxwell, an unauthorized biography. All of my books have chapters on this stuff. And my newsletter has information on this stuff. So yeah, around the corner, in just a few days, we're going to have the Ghislaine Maxwell sentencing. Well, look, whether or not the judge says something that's agreeable to you on the surface or disagreeable, like she's going to give her 5 years with time served, blah, blah, blah. Whatever they do, they're going to treat Ghislaine Maxwell, if she's not killed. And I say that as a caveat because if she is killed, or if we hear that she is killed, then I no longer believe that Jeffrey Epstein or Jean-Luc Brunel were killed, because that would be too much of a coincidence. Then I would think that the three of them may not be in the same place, but that they have been whisked away to freedom somewhere. However, if she stays alive, then they will do the same thing they've done to the big drug lords that they have done business with, this meaning the CIA and Mossad. They will sentence them to 30 years. That gets front page news. And then a couple of months later, in a tiny little section in Mockingbird Media, literally Mockingbird Media, who's still Mockingbird, all right? And if you don't know what that means, please look it up. There will be a tiny little paragraph somewhere saying, oh, well, Ghislaine Maxwell was released yesterday after serving 3 months for some kind of obscure thing that will pop up. But she will not be doing time in the way you would do time if you were trafficking children or if you had raped children. My point being that we were scammed. All of us were scammed. We were scammed by the attorneys. And in closing, I just want to say that Virginia Giuffre had one opportunity. This is the first time in history that we have been able to all collectively look behind the circus and the enormous curtain and all the secrecy. We've been able to look through this portal of human trafficking, a section of our government that has existed in all of the intelligence agencies for always, but especially, to look at child sex trafficking as it showed itself in the Epstein case. Virginia Giuffre had the only ability with the Prince Andrew case to take this further. Any victim who files a civil law case has the right and the responsibility to get as much discovery as possible. If not for us, and frankly, she made herself a public figure. She was the most outspoken, and I have good feelings about her, but I have mixed feelings also, because this was her opportunity to say, although she could have settled, because a civil lawsuit can only be settled with a financial settlement, so a financial amount, but she could have turned around and said, no, I need more discovery before I accept a settlement. And we would have gotten from Prince Andrew, who's an important figure because all of these rings connect to royalty, to presidents, to prime ministers, to the most important businessmen of our time, through like for decades and decades. So like, for example, for Karen Mulder, with the trafficking ring that she was part of, and I've always said that they're all part of the same ring. Look, I think of it as a tree, and they all have the same roots. They all connect the same. So in her case, she named Prince Albert of Monaco. In Virginia's case, she named Prince Andrew. And by the way, there are other women who've also named Prince Andrew, but none of them have been brought to the forefront. So in this case, I think that, quite frankly, I mean, she should have taken this a little bit further, gotten some more discovery. Granted, David Boies is quick to settle. Why? Because if you settle and you do not allow discovery, what are you doing? You're gatekeeping, you're keeping the information secret. But ultimately, your attorney works for you. So Virginia had the power to say, I want more discovery. And I, for one, am disappointed that she didn't do that. I also feel that the dollar amounts that all of these women have received, if you look at them and you compare them to let's say the child victims of the clergy of the Catholic Church, and by the way, the victims, the Epstein Victim Compensation Fund and the Catholic Church thing was handled by Eric I think it's Feinberg or Feinberg, I think, and who handled the 9/11 fund. And I will tell you that some of those settlements were $20,000. The most was $200,000. So that these settlements, I believe, are high, disproportionately high, because of the cover up of the Epstein case. And just before I wrap this up, I will say that mainstream media has begun their Epstein was not intelligent. So on June 4th, Adam Davidson, good standing member of mainstream media of the Mockingbird program, said, he tweeted, "We found no evidence that Epstein was an intelligence asset. We looked, so did others. We found no evidence that Epstein was killed. We looked, so did others. No need for mystery here. The rich and powerful get away with child rape fairly openly. Oh, he looked. I suppose he wanted a letter from CIA or the Mossad or MI5 or MI6 signed and notarized, letting him know that Epstein was an intelligence asset. And because one of those wasn't provided, and obviously I'm saying this in jest, then they didn't find anything. Well, we looked too. And my conclusion remains that he not only was an asset, but now our curtain is closed, right? Our curtain is closed. And Mockingbird Media, with somebody like Adam Davidson, they want this to go away. Well, you know what? You are a lot savvier now than you were 3 years ago. We've been through this together. Those of you who are on the good side know a lot more than you did before. And we know that it doesn't end with Epstein, right? It didn't begin with Epstein. It doesn't end with Epstein. So we have a shot to catch the other one before it becomes too submerged. We know more. We know how they operate. We've been through the ringer. They've tried to pull a psych op on us. They may have pulled a psych op on people who rely on Mockingbird Media for their news, but you and I, if you are listening to me, you're not one of those people. And if you are, you work for the other side, meaning you're part of intelligence and you just want to know what I know, and fuck you if that's the case. But for my regular people, if you're listening to me, you know how they operate. They lie, they deceive. So you have to keep your eye on the ball. If they want you to look over here, like Adam Davidson that day, oh, we found no evidence. Don't look there. If they want you to focus on Ghislaine Maxwell's case as they bury all of this, and as Maria Farmer is spilling the beans on Stanley Pottinger being CIA, you know, the Ghislaine Maxwell case eventually is going to resolve itself. Look where they don't want you to look, okay? Learn to look where they least expect for you to look. And that's what I have done. So anyway, I'm getting worked up again. Like the video. My newsletter this week is going to be great. So I hope you become a subscriber. I will be sending out a free one about something else entirely, about Hefner and Bill Cosby. So if you're not on my list, get on my list. Okay, guys, you have a good day. Talk soon. Bye.